She was forced to give her pup to rogues as tribute. The Alpha King came and hunted them all. Wooden cottages leaned against the cold wind, smoke curling from their chimneys in spirals that faded into the gray sky. Life here was simple but hard, and the villagers survived under the shadow of the rogues who ruled the forests beyond. Elijah stood at the edge of the village, her small hands clutching a fur-wrapped bundle. Her heart ached with every step she took toward the forest path where the rogues waited. Inside the bundle, a soft whine reminded her of her duty. Her wolf pup, a creature of silver fur and bright amber eyes, nuzzled against her chest. She bent down and whispered, "I'll come back for you, I promise." It was not a promise she truly believed she could keep. The village council had decided. The rogues demanded a tribute this year, and the cost of refusal would be death. Eldermist had survived for generations by offering what was asked, and the villagers had chosen the only option that left hope for their people. As she walked through the misty path, memories of her pup as a newborn flooded her mind. She had raised him with care, teaching him to run silently through the woods, to follow her voice, and to hunt alongside her when the time came. The thought of parting with him, even for the sake of the village, made her chest tighten. The forest grew darker with every step. Trees towered overhead, their branches intertwined like the fingers of old gods, casting shadows that danced on the ground. The wind carried whispers of the rogues' laughter and the distant howl of wild wolves. Elijah's pace quickened, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. Finally, she reached a clearing where the rogues waited. They were not merely thieves or bandits. They were cruel, cunning, and feared. Their leader, a man whose face was scarred from countless battles, stepped forward. His eyes glinted like obsidian under the hood of his cloak. "You brought what we asked for," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "Good. Perhaps the village still has sense enough to survive another year." Elijah knelt and carefully placed the bundle on the ground. Her hands lingered for a moment, trembling. The pup whined, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. She fought back tears. "Take care of him," she said softly. "He is all I have." The rogue leader scoffed, but his lips curved in something that almost resembled amusement. "He is ours now. Be glad we don't eat your tribute tonight." Elijah stood, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wanted to run back, to grab the pup and flee, but the rogues had eyes everywhere. A single wrong move could mean her death, or worse, the death of the village she had promised to protect. Turning away, she began the slow walk back to Eldermist. Her mind swirled with guilt, fear, and a quiet anger that burned like fire. She hated the rogues, but she hated her helplessness more. The night fell quickly. Fog thickened and swallowed the path behind her. The sounds of the forest shifted, nocturnal creatures stirred, and a chill seeped into her bones. Elijah's pace slowed, exhaustion pressing down on her. Her thoughts kept returning to the pup, wondering if he was safe, if he remembered her voice, if he was scared. Suddenly, the stillness of the forest was shattered by a series of distant, thunderous howls. Elijah froze, her heart leaping into her throat. The howls were unlike anything she had heard before, deep, resonant, commanding, and full of power. Every nerve in her body screamed danger, yet part of her felt an unexplainable pull toward the sound. Then she saw them. From the darkness, shadows moved like liquid, taking shape into massive forms. Wolves, larger than any she had seen, with eyes glowing like embers in the night, emerged silently from the mist. They circled the rogue camp, their movements precise, almost ceremonial. At the forefront walked a figure taller than any man should be, cloaked in dark fur and armor that shimmered like midnight. His presence was undeniable, commanding. The Alpha King, as the villagers whispered about in terrified reverence, had arrived. The rogues had no time to react. The wolves struck with speed and precision, overwhelming them before they could mount any defense. Elijah watched from the edge of the forest, hidden behind a thick oak, her breath caught in her throat. The scene was terrifying and mesmerizing, like witnessing the forest itself taking vengeance. And then he appeared. The Alpha King's eyes met hers across the distance, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. He moved with the elegance of a predator and the authority of a ruler who had never known defeat. The rogue leader fell before him, a silent witness to the power that had descended upon them. Elijah's chest tightened. Fear warred with awe, and something deep inside her stirred, an emotion she had never expected. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, her pup would be safe. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Silence fell over the forest once more, broken only by the distant echoes of the defeated rogues. The Alpha King did not speak, did not approach, yet Elijah felt his presence watching her, studying her. She took a cautious step forward, unsure why she felt compelled to follow, yet unable to resist. The fog seemed to part for him as he moved through the forest, and she felt as if he had walked out of the shadows of legend into the fragile light of reality. Finally, he stopped and lowered his gaze. Elijah's heart thudded painfully as their eyes locked. There was something in him, a mixture of fury, sadness, and something softer, buried deep beneath layers of unyielding authority. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and then vanished into the mist, leaving behind a trail of power and a silence that seemed alive. Elijah stood frozen, unable to move, her mind racing. The rogue threat was gone, her pup was safe, and yet she felt a tremor of uncertainty. Who was this Alpha King? Why had he chosen to intervene? And why, when she felt both fear and awe, did her heart ache so profoundly? Elijah finally turned and ran back to the village. Every step was heavy with relief and lingering fear. Her mind replayed the night's events over and over, questioning, fearing, hoping. She reached Eldermist as the first rays of dawn painted the valley in gold and rose hues. The villagers emerged from their homes, eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. Elijah's parents rushed to her side, their faces etched with worry and relief. "He's safe?" her mother asked, voice trembling. "Yes," Elijah whispered, still trying to catch her breath. "The puppy, he's safe." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes searching hers. "We've never seen anything like it. The rogues, they're gone. It's as if the forest itself rose against them." Elijah nodded silently, still staring toward the distant mountains where the fog clung stubbornly to the peaks. Somewhere out there, the Alpha King moved like a shadow, watching, waiting, and she could not shake the feeling that their paths would cross again. The village would speak of this night for years. The night when the tribute was claimed but no life was lost. When a legend walked into their world and left its mark on a young woman who had given everything she loved to protect her people. And deep in her chest, Elijah felt a quiet promise, unspoken and powerful, that this encounter was only the beginning. Somewhere in the northern wilds, the Alpha King had seen her courage, her grief, and her defiance. And in his unyielding, dark heart, he had taken notice. The forest held its secrets close, and the wind whispered of change. The rogue threat was gone, yes, but a greater story had begun. One that would test courage, bind hearts, and awaken forces that neither the villagers nor the wolves could yet understand. Elijah looked toward the horizon, her eyes clear and determined. One day, she thought, she would see him again, and when she did, she would be ready. But for now, all she could do was watch, wait, and hope that the pup she loved so dearly remained safe under the watchful eyes of the mysterious Alpha King. The forest, alive with shadows and secrets, seemed to hum around her. Somewhere in its depths, the Alpha King lingered, a silent guardian and a harbinger of something larger than life itself. And Elijah, trembling yet unbroken, knew that her world had just begun to change. The mist rolled in over the valley, carrying the echoes of distant howls, and in that sound a promise was hidden of power, of danger, and of a bond yet to be formed. The forest of Eldermist never slept. Shadows twisted among the ancient trees, and the wind whispered secrets of the past. Elijah walked carefully through the narrow paths, her mind still restless from the night's events. The rogue camp was gone. Her pup was safe. And yet the memory of the Alpha King, his presence, his eyes, and the power he carried, haunted her like a dream she could not forget. The villagers, though grateful, looked at her with quiet concern. "Do you think he will return?" one whispered. Elijah could only shake her head. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I feel like we have not seen the last of him." The days passed, but Elijah's thoughts remained tangled with the shadow of the Alpha King. Then one evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, a sound reached her ears, a low, commanding growl, followed by the rhythmic padding of enormous paws. She froze. From the mist emerged the Alpha King himself. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, his dark hair catching the last rays of sunlight, his eyes burning with a fire that seemed both dangerous and mesmerizing. Beside him, her silver-furred pup trotted happily, unharmed and wagging its tail. Elijah's heart leapt. She ran forward instinctively, kneeling beside the pup and hugging him tightly. "You're safe," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. The Alpha King remained silent, watching her with unreadable expression. His presence was overwhelming, like standing at the edge of a cliff with the wind roaring all around. Yet there was something in his gaze, a curiosity, a recognition, perhaps even a quiet respect. Finally he spoke, his voice low and measured. "You have courage." Few would walk into the forest knowing what waits. Elijah pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. Why did you save him? Why the rogues?" Kale, the Alpha King, tilted his head. "The rogues have broken the laws of the North. They have taken too much. I cannot allow that to continue." Elijah nodded slowly, still unsure how to respond. She wanted to thank him, to ask questions, but words failed her. There was a weight in his presence, a gravity that made her small and fragile in comparison. For the next few days, Kale remained near the village, silently observing, moving through the forest like a shadow of legend. Elijah saw him only in glimpses, but every sighting left her heart racing. There was something magnetic about him, terrifying and comforting at the same time. She realized with both fear and fascination that he was not just a man. He was a force of nature, and yet he carried himself with a strange, quiet humanity. Then one morning, Kale approached her directly. "The rogue threat is not gone entirely," he said. "Some escaped. They hide in the ruins beyond the northern ridge. You will come with me." Elijah hesitated. Her village needed her, yes, but she had never ventured so far into the wilderness. I don't know if I can," she admitted. Kale's gaze softened just slightly, enough for her to see that he understood fear. "You are stronger than you believe, and you are not alone." She took a deep breath and nodded. There was something in his voice that left no room for argument. She would go. The journey was long and dangerous. They moved through forests thick with mist, over cliffs that fell into shadowed valleys, and across rivers that roared like ancient beasts. Elijah clung to her courage, feeling both fear and excitement. Kale walked beside her, silent but alert, his presence always near, always protective. At night, they made camp beneath the towering pines. The firelight cast flickering shadows across Kale's face, revealing the lines of battle and grief he had carried for years. Elijah felt a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. She wanted to ask about the man behind the Alpha King, the one whose eyes had softened when he saw her pup, but she knew there were stories he would never share. "You are brave," Kale said quietly one night, his voice cutting through the silence. "Few would face the North alone. Fewer would face me and survive their own fear." Elijah looked at him, surprised. "You think I'm brave?" He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. You have fear, yet you walk with purpose. That is bravery." Her heart fluttered at his words. There was no mockery, no judgment, only truth. She wanted to speak, to say something that would bridge the distance between them, but the words caught in her throat. The next morning, they reached the ruins where the surviving rogues had hidden. Broken walls jutted from the ground, overgrown with vines, and the air smelled of damp earth and decay. Kale's eyes scanned the area with precision, noting every shadow, every sound. "Stay close," he instructed. "They are dangerous and desperate. Do not stray." Elijah nodded, clutching her pup to her chest. The ruins were silent at first, but then a faint noise, the shuffle of feet, the whisper of movement, reached her ears. Kale moved forward like a shadow, his presence commanding, and Elijah followed, heart pounding. The rogues emerged, armed but unorganized. They hesitated at the sight of Kale, and then panic spread among them. Wolves, massive and silent, appeared from the shadows, surrounding the rogues and cutting off any escape. Elijah watched, frozen and awestruck, as Kale's command of the situation became clear. He moved through the ruins with precision, striking fear without unnecessary violence. His eyes met hers once across the chaos, and she felt a surge of something she could not name: admiration, fear, longing, perhaps all three at once. The battle ended quickly. The remaining rogues surrendered or fled, leaving only silence in their wake. Kale stood among the ruins, his expression calm but alert, as if he could sense every heartbeat around him. Elijah approached him slowly, unsure how to feel. "They're gone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale nodded. "For now, but threats will always return. The North is never at peace. You must be ready." Her gaze dropped to her pup, who wagged its tail happily, oblivious to the danger that had just passed. Elijah felt a surge of relief and gratitude, but also a strange tension. Kale was powerful, frightening, and captivating. She did not understand the pull she felt toward him, the way her heart raced when he was near. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Kale's eyes softened just a fraction. "Do not thank me yet," he said. "There is more to come. And you are not yet ready for what the North demands." Elijah looked at him, confusion and curiosity mixing within her. "What do you mean?" Kale did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned and began walking deeper into the forest, the wolves following silently. Elijah hesitated, then followed, clutching her pup tightly. She realized that she was stepping further into a world she had never known, a world of power, danger, and secrets hidden beneath layers of shadow and legend. As they walked, the wind carried distant howls and the faint rustle of unseen creatures. Elijah's heart pounded with fear and anticipation. She had survived the rogues, but she knew this journey would demand more than courage. It would demand trust, resilience, and the willingness to face truths she had never imagined. At the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley shrouded in mist, Kale paused. His eyes scanned the horizon, then fell on Elijah. "You have done well," he said softly. "Few survive the trials of the North, and fewer survive their own fear." Elijah met his gaze, searching for meaning in his words. "And what about you?" she asked. "Do you ever fear?" Kale's expression darkened, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something hidden: grief, memory, perhaps regret. "Fear is a luxury I cannot afford," he said. "I do what must be done, always." Her heart ached at the glimpse of his vulnerability. Behind the Alpha King, the unyielding predator, there was a man shaped by loss, bound by duty, and haunted by the weight of power. She realized that the Alpha King was not invincible, and that made him all the more human, all the more fascinating. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the valley in shades of fire and gold, Elijah felt the first true stirrings of something she could not yet name. Fear, respect, and a growing curiosity intertwined in her chest. She did not understand it, but she knew it was real. Kale turned toward the ruins, then back to her, his voice low and commanding. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow the hunt continues, and you must be ready for what lies ahead." Elijah nodded, hugging her pup close. Sleep would be hard, she knew, but her mind could not stop turning over the events of the day. The rogues were defeated, yet the North was alive with danger, and the Alpha King, mysterious, powerful, and captivating, had become a force in her life she could not ignore. As the fire crackled and the wolves settled around them, Elijah realized that this journey was only beginning. The hunt was not just for rogues, but for something deeper, something that would test courage, loyalty, and the bonds between hearts in ways she could not yet imagine. And somewhere, deep in the northern wilds, the Alpha King watched over them all, a shadowy guardian and a force of nature, waiting for the moment when destiny would demand everything from both of them. The night fell thick and cold, carrying whispers of the past and promises of challenges yet to come. Elijah closed her eyes, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear, hope, and the strange, undeniable pull she felt toward the Alpha King. The hunt had begun, and the world of Elder Mist would never be the same again. The northern wilds were not kind to travelers. Mist clung to the valleys, and the trees seemed to lean inward, whispering secrets of the past. Elijah followed Kale closely, her pup trotting at her side. The memory of the Alpha King's presence still lingered like a shadow on her heart, pulling her toward him in ways she did not fully understand. Kale moved with the ease of a predator who knew every step of the land. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the forest ahead. But at times, Elijah noticed something in his gaze, a flicker of sorrow, a memory buried deep. She wanted to ask him about it, but fear and respect held her tongue. "The rogues you saw," Kale said one evening as they camped beneath a grove of ancient pines, "were only a piece of a larger threat." His voice was low, but there was an intensity that made Elijah shiver. They were pawns in a game far older than you can imagine. Elijah hugged her pup close, her mind racing. "A game? What do you mean?" Kale's eyes darkened. "There are nobles who seek power through darkness, through curses and ancient laws. The rogues served them unknowingly, but their actions threatened the balance of the North. That is why I acted." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of moss and earth. Elijah felt a chill, not from the cold but from the weight of Kale's words. She had thought the threat was over, that the rogue clan had been the danger. But now the world seemed larger, darker, and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible. "I am just a girl from Elder Mist. You could leave me behind, yet you saved my pup and me." Kale's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "You are not just a girl, you carry courage and resolve, and you have a heart that refuses to break, even when faced with impossible choices. That is rare." Elijah felt her cheeks flush, unsure whether to be embarrassed or proud. But the words lingered, warming a part of her heart that had felt heavy with guilt and fear. For the first time, she saw a glimpse of Kale not as the Alpha King, the shadow of power and fear, but as a man complex, burdened, yet capable of recognition and care. Their journey continued through valleys shrouded in fog, over cliffs that dropped into shadowed rivers, and across forests thick with unseen dangers. Elijah began to notice the patterns of Kale's movements, how he always took the safest path, how he paused to listen to the wind, how he seemed to sense every rustle of leaf or snap of twig before it happened. "You are extraordinary," she whispered one night as they rested beside a small stream. "You see things I cannot even imagine." Kale's expression softened slightly. "Extraordinary," he echoed. "No, I am bound by duty, by law, by a curse." Elijah's heart skipped a beat. "A curse?" Kale nodded, his eyes distant. "Long ago I was marked by an ancient power. I was given strength beyond any human, bound to my pack and tasked with guarding the North. But the cost was isolation. I cannot love freely, for the consequences would be devastating. Those who grow close to me risk everything." Elijah felt a pang of sadness for him. The man who seemed so powerful, so commanding, was also trapped, lonely, and burdened by a past she could barely imagine. Yet she also felt a strange kinship. She, too, had been forced to give up something she loved for the sake of others. The next day they arrived at a ruined castle, its walls cracked and moss-covered, the remnants of a long-forgotten noble line. Kale moved cautiously, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "This is where the remaining rogues have taken refuge," he said. And here lies the heart of the danger. The noble who controls them seeks an artifact of great power, a relic that can bend the North to his will. Elijah swallowed hard. And we have to stop him. Kale's gaze was steady. Yes, and you must understand this will not be easy. Darkness lingers in places like this, and it tests those who enter. You will see things that challenge your courage and your heart. Her pup growled softly, sensing the tension in the air. Elijah felt her own pulse quicken. She had faced fear before, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed on her chest like a stone. They moved silently through the castle ruins. Shadows clung to the broken walls, and the air smelled of damp stone and forgotten secrets. Kale led the way, every movement precise, every sense alert. Elijah followed, trying to mirror his calm, though her heart pounded with uncertainty. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a rogue, armed and desperate. He lunged forward, but Kale moved with inhuman speed, disarming him effortlessly. The rogue collapsed to the ground, fear etched across his face. "Do not move," Kale commanded. "You will speak only the truth." The rogue trembled, realizing he had no chance. Elijah watched, her heart caught between fear and awe. She had never seen anyone move like Kale, precise, controlled, and yet impossibly powerful. As the rogue spoke, revealing the plans of the noble who had controlled the clan, Elijah began to understand the depth of the danger. This was no ordinary battle. It was a struggle for the very balance of the North, a fight against forces older and more cunning than she had ever imagined. Kale listened silently, his expression unreadable. When the rogue finished, Kale's eyes softened just slightly. "You will leave and never return," he said. The rogue nodded frantically, understanding the mercy he had been given. Elijah felt a surge of respect for Kale. He was not cruel, but he was just a man bound by laws older than the forest itself. And yet she also felt something else, a quiet longing. She did not fully understand it, but the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. That night they camped within the castle ruins, the wind whispering through the broken walls. Elijah's pup curled at her feet and she sat quietly, thinking about Kale's words and the glimpse of vulnerability she had seen in him. "You are different from anyone I have met," she said softly. "You carry so much, and yet you still protect others, even me." Kale's gaze met hers. "I do what must be done, the North demands it, and sometimes it chooses those who are worthy." Elijah's heart quickened. Worthy? Did he mean her? Or was it something else entirely, something she could not yet understand? The next morning, they continued their journey deeper into the northern wilds, toward a hidden valley where the noble's influence was strongest. The landscape grew harsher, cliffs sharper, rivers faster, and the forests darker. Every step forward was a test of courage, endurance, and trust. Elijah began to see more of Kale's humanity. In moments of quiet, she saw him speak softly to his wolves, almost as if they understood him in ways no human could. She saw the weight of decisions in his eyes, the quiet grief of battles fought alone, and the flicker of hope he rarely allowed himself to feel. And slowly, she began to realize something she had not expected. Her heart, so guarded by duty and fear, was being drawn to him. Not merely to the Alpha King, the legend, but to Kale, the man who bore the weight of a curse, who carried loss, and yet still moved with purpose, strength, and a quiet kindness that few could see. One evening, as they rested on a cliff overlooking the valley below, Kale spoke again. "The noble seeks a relic," he said. "It is said to grant control over the North, but it is cursed. Those who wield it risk everything, their power, their soul, even their life. You must understand, Elijah, that this battle will test more than strength. It will test your heart, your courage, and your trust." Elijah hugged her pup tightly, looking out over the valley shrouded in mist. "I am ready," she said, though her voice trembled. "I will do what is needed, not just for the North, but for those I care about." Kale's eyes softened just a fraction, and for a moment the Alpha King seemed less like a shadow of legend and more like a man carrying the weight of impossible choices. But the calm would not last. As dawn broke, a shadow moved across the valley, the nobles' forces, ready for the confrontation that would decide the fate of the North. Elijah felt her heart tighten, fear and anticipation mingling. The battle was near, and nothing would be the same again. Cale stood beside her, a dark figure against the rising sun. His presence was both terrifying and protective, a reminder of the power that shaped their world. "Stay close," he instructed, "and trust me. Trust your courage and trust your heart." Elijah nodded, gripping her pup and stepping forward. She did not yet understand all the forces at play, the curses, or the secrets Cale carried. But she knew one thing: whatever came next, she would face it with courage, with heart, and perhaps with the man who had saved her pup, and in doing so had changed her world forever. The northern wilds held their breath, waiting for the storm to come. The valley lay in shadow as dawn broke, the mist curling around jagged cliffs and broken stone. Elijah stood beside Cale, her pup nestled against her, ears alert to every distant sound. Below them, the nobles' forces had gathered, a mass of armored men, their banners dark with the symbol of power and ambition. Cale's eyes scanned the valley, sharp and unyielding. Every muscle in his body was tense, every movement precise. He was a predator ready to strike, a force of nature against the tide of greed and corruption that threatened the North. Yet beneath the Alpha King's authority, Elijah could sense a weight, the burden of history, the pain of isolation, and the knowledge that this battle would demand everything from him. "This is it," Cale said softly, his voice a low rumble against the morning wind. "Whatever happens today, remember your courage. Trust your heart." Elijah nodded, gripping her pup tightly. She did not fully understand what Cale meant by trusting her heart, but she knew she had to follow him, to be strong, to face the storm that was coming. The nobles' forces began to advance, their drums echoing through the valley like the heartbeat of war. Cale stepped forward, his wolves fanning out in precise formation around him, their growls resonating through the air. Elijah felt a shiver of awe and fear. This was no ordinary fight. This was a battle of legend, a clash between light and shadow, courage and greed. As the two sides met, Cale moved with terrifying grace. His wolves struck with precision, cutting off the noble soldiers, while he advanced like a dark storm. Elijah followed at a safe distance, heart pounding, trying to keep pace with the whirlwind of power that was Cale. Yet amidst the chaos, it was not the fighting that tested her the most. It was the moment she saw the noble, a man cloaked in shadow, eyes cold and calculating, reaching for a relic pulsing with dark energy. The air around it shimmered, the power almost suffocating. Elijah realized that this was no ordinary object. It was the source of the noble's ambition, and the danger it posed could not be measured in ordinary terms. Cale's voice cut through the roar of battle. "Do not approach him," he commanded. "That relic carries a curse. One touch and you risk everything." Elijah froze, fear and determination warring within her. She wanted to act, to stop the noble, but she knew Cale's warning was true. The air itself seemed alive with power, and even from a distance she felt its pull. Cale moved closer, his movements a blend of fury and precision. His sword struck with unerring accuracy, his wolves following every command. Elijah watched, captivated and terrified, as the Alpha King faced the noble. There was power in Cale, a raw, commanding force that seemed unstoppable. Yet beneath that power she saw something else: grief, fear, and a desire to protect what he loved. The noble laughed, a cold sound that echoed across the valley. "You cannot stop what is already mine," he taunted, his hand reaching for the relic. Cale's eyes darkened, and in that moment Elijah saw the full weight of his curse. The Alpha King could not hold back, could not falter, yet he knew the cost of failure, not just for himself, but for all who depended on him. His heart, hidden beneath layers of legend and law, beat with desperation and resolve. Elijah realized then that she could not stand idle. She had faced fear before, but this was different. The stakes were higher than any she had imagined. She tightened her grip on her pup and stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "Kale," she called. "You're not alone." Kale turned, his expression softening just slightly at her words. In that brief moment, something unspoken passed between them, trust, understanding, and a bond forged through courage and shared danger. Elijah knew then that he was human, that beneath the Alpha King's power was a man who could feel, who could hope, who could be saved. The noble, distracted by Kale's momentary pause, made a sudden move toward the relic. Time slowed in Elijah's mind. She could not let him succeed. She sprinted forward, her pup running beside her, and with all the courage she could summon, she reached the relic first. The dark energy shimmered around her, but instead of fear, she felt a strange warmth, as if the courage in her heart repelled the curse. She grasped the relic and the power recoiled, shifting, bending to her resolve. She felt Kale's presence beside her, steady and strong, and together they faced the noble's ambition. Kale's sword struck with finality, disarming the noble and ending his reach for power. The relic, pulsing with energy, fell into the river below, its dark glow swallowed by the rushing water. The noble fell to his knees, defeated, powerless, and unable to harm anyone ever again. Elijah's heart raced, relief washing over her in waves. The danger was over, but she could feel the tension leaving her body slowly, replaced by a quiet exhaustion and the lingering echo of the Alpha King's presence beside her. Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable, then softened. "You were brave," he said simply. "More than I expected." Elijah felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mixture of pride and something deeper, something she could not yet name. "We did it," she said softly, looking at him. "Together." Kale's eyes lingered on hers. For the first time, Elijah saw not the Alpha King, but the man beneath, a man who carried loss, grief, and a burden heavier than most could imagine, yet one who had allowed himself to trust her, even briefly. The forest around them seemed to sigh, the tension dissolving into the morning mist. Elijah hugged her pup close, feeling the pulse of life around her, the strength of the north, and the quiet bond that had formed between her and Kale. For a long while they remained in silence, side by side, the world recovering from the storm of battle. The Alpha King, the man of legend, no longer seemed untouchable. He was human, and she realized that she had grown to care for him, not as a shadowy figure of power, but as Kale, the man who had saved her pup, who had guided her through fear, who had allowed her courage to shine. Finally, Kale spoke. "The North is safe for now," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But the world will always demand vigilance. There will be others who seek to disturb the balance." Elijah nodded, understanding the truth in his words. "Then we will face them," she said, her voice steady. "Together." Kale's eyes softened, and for a moment the weight of the Alpha King lifted just slightly. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, a gesture both intimate and protective. Elijah felt her heart swell, the bond between them stronger than fear, stronger than legend, stronger than the shadows that had threatened them. As the sun rose higher, bathing the valley in golden light, Elijah realized that her world had changed forever. The fear, the guilt, the uncertainty, all had led her to this moment. She had faced danger, embraced courage, and found strength she had not known she possessed. Kale stood beside her, a silent guardian, a man of legend and humanity intertwined. Together they had defeated darkness, protected the North, and forged a bond that neither time nor threat could break. Elijah hugged her pup, then looked at Kale. "Thank you," she said simply, "for trusting me, for letting me be part of this." Kale's expression softened, a rare warmth in his eyes. "No," he said, "thank you. You reminded me that even the strongest cannot face everything alone. Even the Alpha King can learn to trust, to care, to hope." The wind carried their words across the valley, mingling with the cries of distant wolves, the rustle of the forest, and the pulse of life that filled the northern wilds. It was a moment of quiet triumph, of redemption, of awakening, a reminder that courage and heart could shape destiny as surely as strength and power. Elijah looked toward the horizon, the rising sun painting the peaks in gold. She knew that challenges would come again, that darkness would return, but she also knew something else, that she would not face them alone. Kale would be there by her side, and together they would endure, protect, and grow stronger. And deep within the northern wilds, the Alpha King allowed himself a rare smile, not as a ruler bound by curse and law, but as a man who had found trust, companionship, and perhaps even love. The forest seemed to hum with quiet approval, the mist lifting as the first warmth of day spread through the valley. Elijah's pup nuzzled her hand, and she smiled, a light in her heart that had been hidden for so long finally burning bright. Kale's voice, low and certain, broke the silence. "Rest now. The North will endure, and so will we." Elijah nodded, standing beside him, feeling the strength, courage, and bond they shared. The journey had been perilous, but it had forged something timeless: courage, trust, and a connection that neither shadow nor legend could ever break. Together they walked from the ruins, the forest alive with whispers of triumph, redemption, and the promise of a future shaped by hearts brave enough to face darkness and hope enough to believe in light. The northern wilds stretched out before them, wild, beautiful, and untamed. And in that untamed land, Elijah and Kale would face whatever came next, not as alpha king and girl from a village, but as two souls bound by courage, loyalty, and the quiet awakening of hearts that had found each other amid shadows and legend. The journey had ended, but their story and their bond had only just begun.